This is Stone Cold Export, and today we are testing this. So this is the new AMD Ryzen R5 3600 XT. This is the best 6-core CPU AMD has to offer for now, and today we are going to pit it against the original R5 3600 from last year and the new Intel i5 10600K. I have chosen to focus on gaming benchmarks at 1080p for this test, because at 1440p, even with medium settings, we are quickly GPU bound with the 5700 XT and pair with these capable CPUs. For the R5 3600 XT, I chose to use the MSI B450M Gaming Plus motherboard, which has gotten the appropriate BIOS update. I did some preliminary testing on the X470 Taichi, and it works fine in that board without the BIOS update, but in the end I decided to go with the newest BIOS with the newest GISA code. So this CPU has a max boost of 4.5 GHz, but when I was testing, a couple of the cores actually boosted to 4.625 GHz, so there appears to be no point in enabling Auto-OC on this CPU because it does it on its own. In fact, when I tested, PBO and Auto-OC resulted in lower overall performance. I did also do an all-core overclock, and I was able to achieve 4.45 GHz at 1.2 volts, which happens to be this chip's FIT voltage or FIT voltage. But again, gaming performance was better at stock speeds. But if you do a lot of multi-threaded tasks, heavy multi-threaded tasks, then all-core overclock will get you some extra performance along with dropping temperature and power consumption. For testing, I used 16 GB of 3200 MHz CL16 memory for the initial test. Then I swapped them out and put in 16 GB of 3800 MHz CL15 memory, because this chip will do 1900 MHz FCLK. I used an Aorus RX 5700 XT for testing and lowered some in-game settings in a couple of the games to get rid of a GPU bottleneck. And all the CPUs have been cooled by the Corsair H115i RGB AIO. So no review is complete without the Cinebench R20 run, so here the stock R5 3600 XT is able to edge out the i5 10600K and the R5 3600. When running this test, the clock speeds hovered between 4.2 and 4.3 GHz, which is 1 to 200 MHz higher than my original R5 3600 will do. Looking at power and efficiency when running Cinebench R20, the R5 3600 had a power draw of 134 watts from the PSU's 12-volt rail. Now this is 16 watts more than the stock R5 3600 and 9 watts more than the i5 10400. It still is 41 watts less than the stock i5 10600K and more than 100 watts less than the overclocked i5 10600K. With an all-core overclock, power consumption drops by 25 watts and is the lowest, and this is the lowest power draw in this chart. So efficiency is how much energy the CPUs use on one run of Cinebench R20. The all-core overclock of the R5 3600 XT comes in first place here and only used about 7.7 kilojoules. At stock, it is slightly less efficient than the regular R5 3600, but it's still miles ahead of both the 14nm Intel chips. Power consumption while gaming is 10 watts higher than the R5 3600 and about on par with the 10600K at stock, but still some ways behind the overclocked i5 10600K. Now let's look at performance in some games. We start off with ANNO 1800. And in ANNO 1800, the R5 3600 XT comes in at 42.3 frames per second on average, which is 14% ahead of the regular R5 3600, and this in no doubt is due to the higher core clock. So if you enable PBO and Auto-OC on the regular 3600, it closes the gap and performs the same as the R5 3600. And with some fast memory, the XT version takes a slight lead and now performs on par with the i5 10600K overclocked. Next game is Assetto Corsa Competitzione, and here the 3600 XT is 5% ahead of the R5 3600. With some fast memory, the 3600 XT gets a significant 13% performance boost, and this brings it 5% in front of the 3600 with PBO and Auto-OC. However, Intel's i5 10600K overclocked is still 11% ahead of the best 3600 XT result. Assassin's Creed Origins is up next, and here the 3600 XT performed on par with the standard 3600. With fast memory, we do see a nice boost in performance, but it's not significantly faster than the R5 3600, and it fails to catch the i5 10600K. In Battlefield 5, the R5 3600 XT is only 2% faster than the 3600 at stock, and with some fast memory that is pretty much the same. It is only slightly behind the i5-10600K, but the Intel CPUs does have smoother frame times here. CSGO is next, and again the 3600 XT is slightly faster than the 3600, but it fails to catch the Intel CPU here as well, even with fast memory. In the Division 2, the R5-3600 XT is performing on par with the R5-3600, but when you pair it with some fast memory, it takes a 4% lead, and this makes it faster than the stock i5-10600K, but when overclocked, the 10600K does take a 5% lead over the 3600 XT. Elder Scrolls Online is up next, and this MMO seems to like Ryzen CPUs, possibly due to the large cache. Anyway, at stock, the R5-3600 XT performs the same as the regular 3600, but when you get some fast memory, it takes a 4% lead over the best 3600 result and the overclocked i5-10600K, so this is actually a win for the Ryzen CPU. Next up is our first Vulkan game, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. At stock, the R5-3600 XT is 6.5% faster than the R5-3600. The Intel i5-10600K is 8% faster at stock speeds, but when we compare the best results here, the 3600 actually takes a 2% lead over the overclocked Intel CPU, although one could argue that this is within margin of error, and the Intel CPU does actually have better frame times. With some fast memory, the 3600 XT is also 7% faster than the best 3600 result. Next is Rainbow Six Siege, and we are running in Vulkan here with 50% render scaling. At stock, we get lower performance on the 3600 XT than the regular 3600 here. With some fast memory, that changes, and the 3600 and 3600 XT CPUs perform the same, with the i5-10600K being 3% in front. Rise of the Tomb Raider is next, and we are using DirectX 12 and the medium preset in the geothermal valley, which is quite CPU intensive. At stock, the 3600 XT is 5% faster than the R5-3600, but 7% slower than the stock Intel CPU. The fast memory remedies this, and now the 3600 XT performs the same as the overclocked Intel CPU and 6% ahead of the best 3600 result. Moving on to Shadow the Tomb Raider, and here at 1080p with medium settings, the R5-3600 XT is able to max the 5700 XT even in the CPU intensive area that we test in with a lot of NPCs. It is pretty much only the 3600 that performs slightly worse than the rest of the CPUs in this test. The last game we're looking at here is The Witcher 3, so here we test in Novigrad, which is very dependent on CPU and memory performance. At stock, the 3600 XT is 11% faster than the regular R5-3600, but 4% slower than the Intel i5-10600K. With fast memory, the 3600 XT is 7% faster than the best 3600 result, but it still comes up 8% behind the overclocked i5-10600K. Now let's take a look at relative performance across 11 games tested. Here the R5-3600 is our baseline, and the 3600 XT is on average 2.5% faster, and when you pair it with fast memory, we see a decent 10% bump in average performance, which is a good result, but it's still 4.5% slower than the i5-10600K on average. However, you do have to pay a premium for those 4.5%. So let's take a look at value, and here the 3600 XT comes out significantly worse than the 3600, but it is still better than the i5-10600K, especially when you factor in that you have to get a cooler in addition to that CPU. And even a $3,600 cooler is not necessarily enough to get the most out of that i5-10600K, because it does pull quite a bit of power when you overclock it. And while the stock cooler that comes with the 3600 XT, which is the Wraith Spire without the vapor chamber, it should have no issues handling this chip, especially with a 4.45 GHz all-core overclock at 1.2 volts, because that basically uses no power at all. The stock cooler that comes with the 3600 XT is the Wraith Spire without the vapor chamber, and it should have no issues handling this chip, especially with a 4.45 GHz all-core overclock at 1.2 volts. The verdict then is that the 3600 is not a bad CPU, but it is surrounded by other good choices. The R5-3600 is the better value choice, and it is the best all-rounder among these CPUs. And on the other hand, you have the i5-10600K, which is more expensive, but it is the better gaming CPU. In the end, the 3600 XT is priced too high in my opinion, and I see no reason to choose this over the excellent R5 3600 or the i5 10600K if you want the best possible gaming performance. And if you can find an i5 10600KF, I would definitely choose that over the R5 3600 XT if you are looking to game. And that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm off trying to get my 4600 MHz memory overclock stable, although it seems my memory is not quite good enough. Anyway, farewell for now.